Hello, everyone. Welcome. I hope you're having a great time on the finance track. Our next session will be led by two speakers from UiPath. We have Sunil Tahilramani, who is the Director of AI Product Platform, and Bill Hincher, who is Industry Lead for Capital Markets. Please join me in welcoming them both to our virtual stage.
Good afternoon and good morning or good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Hopefully you can hear and see me okay. Super excited to be here to present the topic that is very close to my heart around how we combine RPA and AI in the financial services space. Sunil Tahilramani is my name, and I'm joined today by Bill, who's our industry lead for the capital markets team. We'll jump into kind of first a brief overview of what UiPath is, and then we'll walk through how we think of combining RPA and AI and how it's applicable to the financial services space. For those of you who may not be familiar with UiPath is a hyper-automation leader. It's one of the fastest growing B2B software companies in recent times. We just crossed over 6,000 customers and over 2,900 employees situated all around the world. Super exciting landmark. Just recently, we did our Series E funding where the valuation of the company went over $10 billion. But what is also importantly super proud to share that we were recently also featured in CNBC's Disruptor 50 as well as its Forbes AI Top 50 list in terms of private companies who are applying AI for real business use cases. For second year in a row, we have been now the Gartner Magic Quadrant leader when it comes to applying robotic process automation to improve process automation. And during this presentation, we'll define what hyperautomation means and how AI is a core component of hyperautomation, extending the RPA use cases into AI. Let me switch to the next slide, and I'll start off by kind of defining what the vision is and what we're after. We're working with those 6,000 plus customers. We've already seen the big potential that automation is providing to customers across different industries. We'll talk through some of them today. But when we combine AI, the limits become almost boundless, and that's why we built AI into every part of the UiPath platform. The combination of RPA plus AI enables net new use cases and allows you to automate productivity at new levels that weren't possible before. We'll walk you through a couple of examples of what this means in specific industries and what the work we've been doing around COVID-19 as well. One of the biggest implementation is the SBC Bank in Japan. They've publicly shared some of these numbers where they've gained about 3 million hours of capacity in just by year of installation, over $1 billion in cost reductions, significant savings to the bottom line that have been achieved with the power of applying hyperautomation into their portfolio. And some of the quotes that you're seeing, the 3.5 million hours of capacity to be generated by 2020 and over 5 million by 2022, they're on a significant path across their different processes that include compliance, risk operations, branch operations, and even routine operations center processes. This has gone to a point where they now include it in part of their annual reports as well, some of the saving initiatives that have been driven by the intelligent automation that they've been able to provide. I've been watching some of the earlier sessions this morning. There has been a lot of questions on what are you doing around COVID-19. We have a whole sort of resources of COVID automations that we have been providing across different industries. You can, on this link, check out some of those automations that we've been doing. The one that kind of has been front and center for a lot of banks has been around this processing of SBA loans. Two of the three big banks worked with us on automating a lot of those inbound applications that came in during the loan approval stage. And the numbers are staggering, about 90% savings in terms of times for turning around that loan application. So we've been talking a lot about hyperautomation, and it'd be good to kind of define what that means and what are some of the core components of hyperautomation. Essentially, hyperautomation is the expansion of automation from RPA to a combination of technologies that enable an end-to-end automation lifecycle. RPA acts as the center of gravity, but where you can apply things like AI using natural language processing, computer vision, OCR, machine learning. All of those capabilities kind of make it possible for organizations to expand the use of automation to more complex use cases and drive a more mature enterprise framework. And even Gartner defined this as the #1 technology trend for 2020. And they've clearly said that one of the key attributions of hyperautomation is the ability to get to this AI-enabled decision-making. And the numbers are all there. When you see some of the stats, we are clearly seeing that last decade was around consumer AI, but we are definitely seeing automation acting as that vehicle to bring AI into the workplace. Some of the stats that you're seeing here is around 80% of companies that have deployed RPA will introduce AI in some shape or form over the next couple of years. And the whole growth on around core RPA is also exponentially expanding, reaching about 90% of the organizations just in the next couple of years as well. This combined with the savings of about 25 to 40% and huge productivity increases that we are already seeing contributed to AI. This whole notion of RPA plus AI will become more and more prevalent in the industry, and all the signs are there to say that. Now, it's probably a good time to kind of define the differences between RPA and AI, where RPA stops and how you augment those use cases with AI. So when you think of traditional RPA, you can think of some of the activities that are listed on this slide here, such as ability to fill out forms, move folders from one to another, read your databases. It's very much focuses on execution, very rules-based and repetitive tasks. And the key kind of difference here is these are RPA workloads tend to be definitive, working on structured data. Where AI comes into the picture is by augmenting what we can do with RPA and moving from this execution phase to the thinking phase. You can now go and address increasingly complex tasks. So it's not just about filling out a form or removing a folder. You can now understand documents, even when they contain semi-structured or unstructured data. You can mine and understand where your inefficiencies are and have a scientific point of view on where you can drive improvements. And combine that with things like conversational AI, where you can bring in chatbots not only to do kind of conversations with end customers, but also kind of drive an end-to-end process where, for example, a chatbot can initiate a request that checks the ERP systems on a stock out if it's a retail scenario. And the key difference here is the ability to now do things like pattern recognition, work on this semi-structured and unstructured data, and get to more probabilistic and high variability scenarios. Often we get asked, so I understand that AI can augment RPA and can help us drive to more complex use cases, but where should I look for opportunities? And we try to break it down into three distinct pillars where you see different use cases. One is around uncertainty. Some of the examples are listed here where you cannot determine the outcome with 100% certainty. Too much variability involved with things like purchase decisions, language translation using NLP, and unstructured data where you want to do things like invoice extraction, where it's a combination of skewed documents, handwriting, etc. So the way the UiPath AI platform works is we break it down into, first of all, it's built into the rest of the hyperautomation portfolio that UiPath has. And we start off by first giving you the ability to scientifically discover automation opportunities with products like task mining and process mining. Task mining, for example, uses machine learning techniques to determine what end users are doing and where the opportunities for driving efficiencies are. You can then teach these robots, which are software robots, new AI skills, such as document understanding. We'll talk more about that through a couple of use case examples, but an ability to work both through semi-structured, unstructured documents, and drive a lot of productivity as well as efficiency in processing documents is where document understanding plays in. AI computer vision, the name is self-explanatory. You have a lot of dynamic UIs or even virtual desktop environments where it's not easy to kind of read from screen what's going on and make sense of it. AI computer vision helps kind of understand and address those scenarios. And finally, conversational understanding with things like chatbots. The UiPath platform is also super extensible in the sense that you're not limited to using the first-party services that we talked about, highlighted in the magenta color here. You can also bring in your own machine learning models or skills, or ones that are developed by our partners. We'll talk about the partner ecosystem in a minute as well. And then finally, bringing it all home, you want to manage the life cycle of these machine learning models. We provide a management platform with AI Fabric that allows you to apply, scale, and manage all of those AI skills, whether it's UiPath's first-party skills or the custom skills that you have developed. And Action Center is the product that helps you to bring human in the loop for doing validations and making some decision points in terms of improving accuracy as well. And you see this as a continuous loop because we allow for retraining of the models. So you're constantly improving on those models and driving to net new levels of accuracy. Since this is very much a financial services conversation, I want to turn it and bring it our industry expert Bill into this conversation to talk through some of what we are doing in terms of sample AI use cases in the financial services space.
Thanks, Sunil. So I just want to provide a quick overview of some practical AI use cases that we've seen amongst our customer base. Obviously, if you look at financial services as a whole, they tend to be early adopters of technology, and that extends or includes RPA. A number of our more advanced clients have had RPA in place for a number of years now, and are now really starting to explore this next frontier, which includes the introduction of AI and some other cognitive capabilities, and allows them to tackle a greater universe of use cases. So, obviously, anytime we need to turn unstructured data into structured data, we have to apply some machine learning capability typically so that we can use that data within an automated workflow. So you can see a number of use cases here that surround or involve extraction from a variety of different documents. You have financial statements, mortgage documents we'll get to in a second. But there's a variety of different use cases around document extraction, document understanding, classification of different things like emails or expense types, which we'll also touch on in a second. So there's a variety of different use cases that kind of come to the forefront when you apply AI in addition to RPA. So now if you could go to the next slide, please. So diving a little bit deeper into one of those particular use cases, and this is from one of our larger mortgage players here in the US. Obviously, the mortgage process is one that is very document intensive and typically requires a variety of different machine learning capabilities so that the process can become more automated or more streamlined. So everything that you see here from steps 1 to 8 in white, that's our core RPA platform. Those steps you see 3 and 4, that's where machine learning gets introduced into the process to make it a more streamlined and efficient process. So really steps 1 and 2 involves just simply moving files and folders around, getting things in the proper places. And then once we have that, we can then apply machine learning in step number 3 to perform what's called mortgage indexing, which is really simply classification. So within the mortgage process, many of us are aware, there tends to be a very large document called the mortgage packet, which can contain anywhere from 70 to 100 to even 200 pages worth of documents and includes different document types. Now, as a first step in terms of applying machine learning to this process, we typically have to perform this indexing so that we know which documents are actually contained within that package. And once we have that classification, we can then apply an additional machine learning model to actually start to perform the extraction. Now, the extraction can come in a variety of different flavors. Some of those forms or document types within that mortgage packet will be semi-structured or structured. And we might only need to use a template or a rule-based extraction model. When we get into unstructured document types, we can then apply machine learning models, which have been built custom to deal with those document types. And we can combine all of those extractors, whether it's template or rule-based or machine learning, into a framework so that we're not always using a complex extraction type on a simple document type and vice versa. So it really helps manage costs and the overall process. Once we get the information out of that document, it really becomes an exercise in core RPA. We can perform things like, what we can validate whether signatures are actually present, where they need to be present, a variety of other validations. When we get to step number 7, and Sunil alluded to this a little bit earlier, we can seamlessly bring a human into the loop to validate some of those items. So if we have a machine learning extraction with a low confidence score, the model is not sure on the accuracy of the extraction, we can easily bring a human into the loop to make that validation and then to pass that information or that validation back into the model to retrain the model for better accuracy as we go forward. So it's really about surrounding the machine learning components with the core platform, and it really provides an end-to-end workflow. So now we can go on to the next one. So another use case that is really prevalent amongst our financial services clients is really negative news screening. And this really amounts to the work that a KYC or Know Your Customer team, compliance teams are performing around activities around their institutional clients in terms of analyzing and gathering any negative mentions of that particular client in the news. So there's a continuous scan of those news articles as they relate to a particular set of clients. Any negative mention or adverse media mention triggers an alert. Now, typically in the past, what has been leveraged has been string matching. And performing and leveraging string matching here often leads to a high prevalence of false positives. So it really requires a hefty workload from a manual perspective in terms of sifting through the noise to determine which are actual negative news articles that pertain to that client. It becomes a very manual type of process. So through the application of a variety of different machine learning models, we can use RPA to gather a variety of different news articles, and then we can perform a variety of different filtering with those different machine learning models. So you have a machine learning model in this scenario that indicates or performs a classification on whether that article actually is a criminal activity or relates to a criminal activity versus non-crime. So we do a crime versus non-crime classification. We then apply some sentiment analysis to perform to get the overall sentiment of that article. And then there's also a named entity recognition to match the entity type to the actual news mention that's performed. And all that information can then be passed to an analyst at the end of the process to make that final determination. So it's about speeding up that process, making it more efficient so that they're not bogged down in just simply collecting that information and sifting through that information. We can hopefully apply machine learning to filter out a lot of those false positives so that they get a more refined results that they can focus on at the end of the process. And we can jump to our last use case here, which is from one of our Australian banking clients, Heritage Bank, in their application of machine learning into one of their loan application processes. So typically what was happening was the loan application process was slowed down because there were a variety of different applications or processes that were required to be performed manually. They also faced some increased pressure and scrutiny from the regulators in Australia in terms of refining the process and making it more accurate. So as an input to some of that loan application process, they were submitting some expense type. And in the process prior to machine learning, they had a team that was required to simply make a classification and categorization of those expense types used in that loan decision process. So what they did here was they built a model and deployed that on our AI fabric, which seamlessly brings it into the automated workflow. And they were able to leverage that machine learning model to make that categorization and to speed up that whole automated process. So you see handful of benefits that were really tangible in this case. Obviously, those hours that were saved freed up those employees to focus on more value-added tasks. They were able to focus on client-facing activities. They were also more satisfied from an employee perspective because it was a fairly mundane task. And first and foremost, really, the customer experience was able to be improved upon because now we were able to reduce that loan application processing time to only potentially minutes or hours from days or longer. So really tangible benefits, and this use case is actually available on our website as well. So I encourage you to go to our website and check out Heritage Bank and read up more on that use case. So I'll turn it back over to Sunil to close us out.
Thanks, Bill. Great set of use cases. Thanks for sharing, Bill. And ultimately, I think we also want to point out that we've always from the ground up designed the platform to be open, and we work with a huge ecosystem of partners. You're seeing several of these logos here around the different categories that we just described. And so if you're using one of these partners for things like conversational understanding, for example, it's easy to bring those models into the UiPath platform and start to automate more using the power of RPA and AI. We've also made it super easy for you to get started with the starter AI models that we provide out of the box. Several of the UiPath document understanding models are listed here, such as invoice extraction, receipt extractions that are already generally available. And then we have a couple of ones like utility bills and purchase orders that are currently in preview to be released shortly. And then there are several open source models around language analysis, language comprehension, and things like image moderation that we've made available that you can check out on our UiPath website, as well as our documentation can give you more details around what sort of techniques are being used behind each of the models and how you can work with the UiPath platform to bring it into your automation scenarios. I know we are coming at the close of our time. We would love to meet and connect with each and every one of you. You can request direct meetings with myself or Bill or other UiPath colleagues that are joining the AI4 conference. We also have a virtual booth set up, which you can go check out and meet us there. In order to stay connected with us and learn more about the vision that we are setting, as well as the combination of AI and RPA and how that can benefit you, check out our AI plus RPA page, and we frequently blog on our UiPath AI blog. So that's another way for you to keep connected with us. And finally, nothing can beat kind of taking things for a spin. You can give it a go on our enterprise cloud trial and start to kind of experience some of the power of the platform yourself. With that said, I'll bring it to a close and we'll open it for any questions. Hey, Patrick, are we still on, or how do we know?
Yeah, I think we're on, Sunil, and I actually see a question in the chat now in regards to what products we're using RPA with. I assume that's a question in regards to what applications that exist within typical organizations that RPA is integratable with, and that's really extends to really any application that exists within the enterprise today. So large ERP systems, proprietary in-house systems. There's no limit to the applications that RPA can be integrated with, and that's owed to the strength of the platform, whether it connects via API or simply through the user interface. There's a variety of ways that we can connect to really any application that exists today.
Yeah, and to add to that, Bill, I'll also say that we built integrations through activities with a lot of applications. You should also check out the activities that we have across the different applications that we work with. I think there's one other question that has come in around useful features in AML investigations. Bill, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I am not entirely sure on the extent of the questions. Typically, the RPA use case that we see most prevalent among AML investigations tends to be in regards to case management. So leveraging RPA or automation to go out and collect a variety of different data sources that are typically required to perform that investigation so that we can speed up the investigation process for that team. And then allow them to spend more of their time on that particular investigation as opposed to just performing that data collection activity.
Yeah, and if you're looking for specific content on it, feel free to reach out to us and we can give you both slide content as well as any external content that we'll have available. Bill, there is a question on both anomaly detection and fraud.
Oh, okay, I think that's in relation to the specific product types we're using RPA with. I don't have that information in front of me in terms of specific anomaly detection or BSA, AML type of activities, or applications. But safe to say we can extend the RPA to really any application, and I'm happy to kind of continue the conversation if you want to reach out afterwards. I can dig deeper for you.